Okay. Hi. Okay. Gosh, we got a bunch of participants on. Everybody. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Ashley's on there. I see her.
Good. Yeah, I told Ashley, I'm like, Ashley, you need to be here tonight.
Good. Welcome. Johnny. I see Johnny back and Michelle. Yes, good. Michelle's on here. Looking at Sharon on here. Tom, good. I'm glad Tom's on here. We're going to talk a little bit about the sockets you wear tonight, Tom.
Yep.
So it'd be nice to have you as an expert.
We got Beth on. Oh, hey, Beth.
Beth Hudson. Okay. Good. Good.
All right, guys, give us a shout out. Try out the chat section. Tom's got the answers to all the questions.
All right. That's what I like to hear. Thank you, Tom. We want to quiz you a little bit about your performance in the Martin Bionic socket as we get into this.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, Glenda. All right. Ashley says, I'm going to try to stay awake. End of the school year has me exhausted. Ashley, girl, I'm here. I'm awake. I got 4 kids ending the school year. Come on, girl. Stay with us.
It's almost over, though, right? It's almost there.
Oh, my gosh. Thank goodness.
All right.
Mom says, loves the liquid to powder. Johnny V. What's going on, man? We got Robert from Chicagoland.
Good, right.
Robert, you're going to be front row seats for the amputee national conference if all goes well. If all goes well. We got Michelle from Pennsylvania. All right.
That was the last day of June 2nd. You're teaching summer school. Oh boy.
Sure.
Yeah, you get a week off, don't you, Ashley? I'm reading your notes here. Somebody else jumped on. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for showing up, everybody, tonight. Got a pretty interesting conversation we're going to have here. And Cosi's expert on some of this stuff, and I may be an expert on some of it. I don't know. I'm definitely a wearer, and I think you can all relate, and hopefully we get some information to you that's helpful, and maybe it'll be recognizable of what you have and what your processes fit you with. So I'm pretty excited about it. Yay.
Hi, yay. Nice to see you, Paula. Oh, F, sorry.
No, I was going to say, this is where my nerd flag goes up high with the sockets.
Good. Awesome.
Right on. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening for Socket to Me webinar. My name is Chris Herbacher. I'm with VitalFit. And we've got wonderful giveaways tonight. We're also going to do a special shout out to our folks that have supported us for the last year, which is going to be super fun. And we have 2 wonderful facilitators. Cosi Bioso has been in the industry over 20 years. She has a clinical practice in Florida. She's a master's in PT, and her practice is everything limb loss. So she specializes in the community. She also has an awesome show, Cosi Talks Live, Facebook, Wednesday nights. So check her out. It's 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Welcome, Cosi Bioso.
Thank you, guys. Love doing this show. Thank you.
Our other host tonight is Greg Benino. Greg's been in the industry also over 20 years, working in R&D as well as a clinical specialist as a certified prosthetist. Greg also has 22 medals in the Olympics. His dogs are barking. And Paralympics. He's also a 2-time world champion in alpine downhill skiing. Welcome, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I apologize. The dog's barking. I thought I had him babysit with a bone. So, yeah, that's kind of the back door, the back sounds of the office. So, so I apologize, everybody. But I know you're all dog lovers, right? So, but thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cosi. This should be another fun show to share the information. So, thank you.
Yep, I want to give a shout out. If you put your questions in the chat, we are going to keep an eye on the Q&A, but ideally the chat, and we will do everything we can to get to all of your questions before the duration of the webinar. So.
Yeah, and I see that Jane popped on board from, got a Tar Heel on board, and we got Paula says she got her goodies. Thank you. Awesome. All right.
Good, good.
Our turn? My turn?
Your turn.
You want to tee it off, Cosi? Are we ready to go? Okay.
Yeah, all right. I'm excited about this one.
Okay.
So guys, when it comes to sockets and when it comes to componentry, I always like to talk about the basics. Where does the foundation of this componentry come from? What is the anatomy behind it? Because I feel like it gives you a better understanding when you look at all the options available out there on the market. So some of you who have listened to my show, you've heard me talk about the different classifications of prosthetic feet, and then how to identify what kind of foot belongs with which company. It just makes it easier to make choices after that if you know what it is that you're looking at. So this is the part that we're going to be talking about tonight. This is my bread and butter. And a dirty little secret is when it came to learning this stuff as a student, the socket part is what I struggled the most with. And that's the part that I had to study more and more and more to get a better understanding of how it worked on the amputee patient. And now I kind of love it. So I think, yes, we are definitely going to be talking about socketless sockets tonight, guys. First, I'm going to be giving you kind of a history of the shape of the socket for below the knee and above the knee. And then Greg is our maestro for the modern socket technology that we're going to be presenting tonight. So I'm putting him on the spot for that.
Yeah, just laughing. That's funny. Socket to me.
Socket to me. All right. So I think, do we have a really neat slide coming up, Paul? Can I cue you now, Paul? There you go. Okay. So guys, for me, I love history. And those of you who kind of keep up with my page, you know that recently I was at the Spanish Military Hospital in St. Augustine, the oldest city in the United States. And a lot of what they did back then was amputations. Unfortunately, that's how they dealt with a lot of infections. And they had some of these prosthetic devices in their display cases. And it just kind of amazes me, the craftsmanship. You know, Greg and I were chatting about that the other day, about how skilled some of these early prosthetists had to be to carve these sockets out of wood to get a fit. And Greg, you used to wear.
Right. So I'll date myself. Yeah, good point. I'll date myself. And you all see these images on the screen. There's some really great technology there for the day. The Tin Man leg is primarily done in Europe, and they used to bash tin, and that was your prosthesis. But we had like Cosi said, we had a discussion about how perfect you had to be with your math when you initially set up these wooden prostheses. And dating myself, I had one. My first prosthetic 41 years ago was a quadrilateral with a friction knee and just a kind of a satch foot, but the craftsmanship is just unbelievable. There isn't a bunch of pylons and bits and pieces that you can add to get the correct height. They had to do their math correct. So hats off for those old timers. I'm one of them, but who did some of that stuff. But pretty neat technology. And what did you see at the Spanish Museum there? Did they have any old prosthetic stuff?
They did, and I actually got kicked out of the Spanish Military Hospital because I started doing a live show. And caught and kicked out. It's the only time I've been kicked out of a place, a hospital. Go figure. But it was just fascinating to see some of these devices and how these people managed on rough terrain, because it's rough in St. Augustine between the hills and the rocky roads and things like that. Yeah, they're living their lives with these prosthetic devices. So you know, if you go back to that, the original fit, guys, it was what they called kind of like a plug fit. And the best way I can equate it is kind of like the pouring Jello into the mold. So you just kind of got poured into it, and your body had to kind of fit to the prosthesis. And even with the skill of the prosthetist carving, you know, it was more you were fitting to the prosthesis versus the prosthesis fitting to you, if that makes sense.
Right.
No liners, you know, and it was held on a lot of times with these thigh corsets, as you can see the lacing on the corsets. For the below the knee and also for above the knee, they would fashion the hip belts. There was really no concept of having relief in certain areas of the leg or weight bearing. It was just kind of like, well, let's kind of carve the structure as how it looks on the leg and put the person in there. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of problems with skin. And even I remember, and just the notion that you had calluses and sores on your skin was kind of a normal part of the everyday life of the amputee, and it wasn't accepted. Even as recently as, you know, the 70s and 80s, right. That patients would come to me and say, well, this is just how I've always had to live. And it's like, nope, technology is changing. We're kind of advancing with that now. So in the 1950s, guys, 1950s, that's when we finally started seeing a change in the shape of the sockets, both for below the knee and for above the knee. Okay, so for below the knee, and I wish I had some samples, I had to give them back to the prosthetist I stole them from. We started seeing the patellar tendon bearing system. Okay, and your patellar tendon, let me grab Bob. He's going to be my reluctant model tonight, right? Your patellar tendon is that big, fat, juicy tendon that sits right underneath your kneecap. Okay, so the below the knee sockets that were being designed in the 1950s and revamped, they were meant to put the majority of the weight there, to take the weight off the bottom of the residual limb, okay, as much as 80% of that weight, okay? And then also you started seeing advances in or changes to the suspension systems. So the prosthetists started playing around with the medial wall, the inner part, right? Started adding wedges here and there to kind of help with the suspension a little bit more, okay? You started seeing eventually pin lock and eventually suction with valve, and then finally the elevated vacuum systems that we see nowadays. And then with the above the knee, this is the part that I really like to just kind of look into and just see how it works. So a lot of them, the earlier shapes, and we can't see it from above, were almost triangular, like a triangular kind of shaped socket. And then as they started evolving, again, 1950s, moving into the 70s and 80s, we started seeing what's called the quadrilateral socket. It's exactly that. It was in the shape of a quadrilateral. And if you just kind of imagine a rectangle, okay, the long length of it going across your body, okay? And the purpose of making it a quadrilateral socket was to allow for the soft tissue to kind of be accommodated a little bit better to take up some of the pressure, okay? And then they started evolving that shape, okay? So where the rectangle, and I hope this makes sense, it used to be that the socket was like this. And then over the course of time, they changed it to be more like this. And I hope that makes sense. I really should have had a socket here with me.
No, I agree. Here, I can hold one up. Yeah, I got one. So exactly what Cosi's saying. Here's a ischial containment socket, and it is, you know, the ML width is different than the old quad socket. It was almost laid backwards. If you were wearing a quad socket, they almost, if you're going to don that, this was what they look like. But again, we return that 45 degrees, and that's what you know, your ischial containment or CAD cam type of socket is. So really, you're spot on, Cosi. Though I had the pleasure of wearing a quad socket, and I think that'd be a great for a Cosi poll here, a Greg poll. How many people actually wore quad sockets? It'll date you how long you've been an amputee, but believe it or not, there's companies right now having adjustable with Boa quad sockets that are 3D printed. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here a little bit later in the show. That's some neat stuff. I
do want to kind of reiterate, because this is something I have to talk to my patients, my above the knee patients, when they start having some problems with the trim lines in their above the knee socket. The reason why they changed that diameter, right? So now it's longer from front to back, was to allow your glutes to work better.
That's
okay?
right.
Something I heard from some amputees that they use, like yourself, Greg, we used the quad socket and then changed the ischial containment socket, where they started noticing that their glutes started beefing up more because they were able to utilize the glutes more and power their walk. So that was kind of a big thought process behind that, okay? So when it comes time to also make that kind of a socket, the theory is also to lock the femur into place.
That's right.
So to give that femur more stability. And we're going to see some of that technology, some of that thinking also in these more modern sockets a little later on in the talk. So that's why when folks start saying, I want to bring the trim lines down, I want to bring the trim lines down, I always feel like it's important to explain this is why your trim lines do have to be up. And if you are able to get used to ischial containment, that's going to help you become more stable in that socket.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I think it increases your symmetry in your gait. You look at, I saw I think it was Kathy put on there. She was fit with a quad socket in 1974. So I'm sorry, I got to look. It was Kathy. Yeah. So you understand, Kathy, what the feeling is. Like Cosi said, it basically that quad socket would go right across your gluteal crease and kind of cut off and strangulate your muscles. So you didn't have the best gait, and you could always call somebody who had no containment in their gait cycle. Me as a user and a prosthetist, I can see when you're contained and when you're not contained. Now, like Cosi said, you have to be able to tolerate that more intimate, higher ischial containment socket. And some people can, some people can't. That's why there's still being, quad sockets being fit today. I think, but your proprioception becomes greater, and with the advances in materials, it makes it a lot more comfortable. I think on a note with your subischal type of sockets, now I think that works well with vacuum when you've got real long, through knee type amputations. But as that amputation level gets shorter, it makes it a lot more difficult without elevated vacuum and a bunch of extra parts on there to keep it suspended. I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's all what your lifestyle and your prosthetic design of socket should revolve around that. And I think prosthetists nationally are pretty educated guys, and they should have you correctly fit. So whatever you're wearing, if it's a PTB or a supracondylar or ischial containment or quad, I think it's all good. I think what it comes down to, and here's the loaded question, Cosi, for you, is even with all these neat technologies and materials they have with flexible and semi-rigid, it all creates the same issue internally with perspiration and skin problems. So I had a huge conversation today, liner wearer, transfemoral patient going to ischial containment, and he's got some distal problems, he's sweating. I mean, all these things. I'm like, okay, come on, this is where you got to think about your skin, because we want to think about this socket. It needs to be a sterile environment, everybody. Doesn't matter what you have. So I think that's where VitalFit comes in and supports these things. And I have to really keep pushing back. And I think that's what's the most important thing. And I had conversations with patients today. So that being said, I think.
Yep. And there's something
I knew Chris was queuing.
So I'm going to take a break here.
Okay.
And we're going to give our first giveaway, which is super fun because I like the fun stuff. So Jamie is going to put a link in the chat box and check it out. And please tell us the name of the first blog that comes up on that link. And Jamie will draw a name and we will let you know. So stay tuned on that.
So Michelle, I do want to address something here because Michelle says I'm lost with the terminology. So there is some terminology I do want to clarify, guys, because a lot of times people will intermix what they're talking about. And I want to make sure we separate things. The difference between socket shape compared to suspension. And I think a lot of times folks mix up the terminology and they mix up the problems that they're having. So socket shape is referring basically to that. Is it a quadrilateral shape, a rectangular shape? Is it an ischial containment? Okay, and what I mean by ischial containment, sorry, Bob, you're gonna flash everybody right now. Your butt bone. So basically where you sit down, that butt bone, that's your ischial tuberosity. Okay, so some of the socket shapes are meant for the above the knee user, are meant to contain that bone, making sure that bone goes all the way down into the socket. Okay, so the shape of the socket is one thing. The suspension, meaning how that socket stays on your leg, is something completely different. That's when you're going to start hearing terminology like the pin lock system, which is the little pin that goes into the hole and locks you into that socket. Suspension sleeves. So this can come in the form of like a neoprene type material sleeve that goes over the socket to hold your leg on. It can be something like supracondylar, excuse me.
That's right.
In the below the knee. So supracondylar meaning it's coming over the condyles and it's hanging on the bone and it's being suspended that way. Then you have your fancier stuff like the suction valve. So it kind of sucks you into there and holds it in with negative pressure. Or your vacuum system. Again, similar concept there. Okay, so differentiating between the shape of your socket and how your socket is held on its suspension system. I think it's important to understand the difference between the two because you can present with problems between the two and you need to know which problem you need to solve. So Michelle, you're in above the knee. Okay. So does that hopefully clarify things a little bit there, Michelle, with the terminology?
Yeah, good point, Cosi. We bounce around and for me, I seem to deal with a more transfemoral patients. So, again, what Cosi said is we're talking about socket designs and concepts. Suspension, as Cosi said, is maybe a lanyard, your KISS system, your pin, your straight suction with the sleeve, or supracondylar patella weight bearing too, that, depending on your amputation level as a below-knee amputee or BK transtibial. But what's really cool about some of those sockets they're designing for those patients, if that's you, is these Boa systems. I don't know, somebody may have them on there. We could do a poll who's wearing a Boa. These little adjusting ratchets, especially in a supracondylar socket, make it a lot easier to get the prosthesis on. And you spin the little dial and you crank down the lanyard, and it's just really kind of neat where those designs have gone with these new Boa systems. So BKA Boa from Michelle right there. I can't say enough. This is neat technology, and everybody seems to be incorporating it. So, but good point. And again, don't get confused what's suspension and what is your socket. So that's what we're trying to educate. So,
and this is again, super general.
Yeah.
If you feel like my socket just isn't comfortable, I feel like things are pushing, I feel like things are painful, I think that things are tight, that refers more to the shape of your socket. And that's general umbrella, guys. If you're the kind of person that's saying, dadgummit, every time I sit down, this leg just pops off, I cannot keep this leg on, that is a suspension issue. Now, can there be some socket shape issues that are contributing to suspension? Yes, but that's kind of a way to kind of separate it in your head so that when you're communicating with your prosthetist about the problem you're having, it kind of clarifies things a little bit better for your prosthetist.
Great point.
So this is a really great question. So Heidi, how do you stop and treat chafing when you run? And this kind of plays into what we're talking about tonight, Heidi. So yeah, number one, liquid to powder. I'm a runner.
And Heidi's the winner too. So,
okay.
Congratulations. You're gonna find out.
So congratulations, Heidi, because you'll be able to try it. So sorry, Cosi, go on.
There you go. So Heidi, it's a two-part thing. I love running myself. I'm not an amputee, but I love running. I love teaching my patients how to run. It's love it. So I definitely have a few runners, and here in Florida where we sweat like it's nobody's business. So we kind of have to try a couple of different things. First thing, that liquid to powder that Greg held up, it's a no-brainer for me, mainly because you can put it on right away. Heidi says, just putting in the answer, I cannot run. Okay, I thought you were asking a question about running. I'm sorry.
She was the winner. Yeah.
She's the winner. So.
How to treat chafing. Okay, when you run. So, what I like about the liquid to powder is it goes on quickly, it dries quickly. And as you run, usually my runner girl, she'll take with her one of the travel size liquid to powders, and she has it in her little fanny pack. And as we do our longer runs, she will stop and reapply, especially around the edges of her liner where she starts to really need it. So that's a huge way to help prevent things from happening. Another way is if you are an excessive sweater, and I had somebody email me this week that they've been trying everything, to look into the type of liner that you're using. We had a nice talk about that in our previous webinar, and it's on the VitalFit website where we talked about the different kinds of temperature-friendly liners that are available out there nowadays. And the other thing is look at your suspension. When you're running, you're obviously moving up and down more. You might be pistoning more in your socket and in your liner, which could cause friction, which will cause chafing and sweat. So for running, you might need a little bit of extra suspension. You might either need a suspension sleeve, a belt, if you're an above the knee, or you may have to switch altogether and perhaps have a pin lock system along with a sleeve. Okay, so all these things you got to kind of take into account to try to prevent the chafing and all those skin problems when you're doing higher activity levels. Your turn, Greg.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's 100%. And it's not only a basis on your activity, it's just every day is where we've got to really focus on skincare here. So think about that. You want a sterile environment. I keep like that was like my new tag word. The more sterile your liners, sockets, whatever you're wearing, the better outcome you're going to have. We just seen some really horrific cellulose and bacterial infections this week, and help some patients with it. And a lot of this can be prevented with the VitalFit stuff. So moving on real quick, I want to talk even a belt for running. There's some great comments coming up. The Boa system, Kathy, we're going to talk about that a little bit. We've got some images for you. but I see it. Did you say the BOA ratchets down or lanyard down? It basically ratchets down when you get these little BOA adjusters. I don't know if you guys can see that on there. This would be laminated in the socket with a roping system that when you twist that, I don't know if you can hear it, it tensions up the windows, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But a lanyard that we're talking is suspension. So, and I like lanyard systems. I think they're really neat for general use. I think if you're starting to get into running activities or higher end sports, it still can work, but maybe there's a better alternative. So, so that being said,
Can I inject
announce
here?
that winner?
I just want to tell Jessica, the liquid to powder is amazing for BKs, AKs, uppers. I mean, essentially your skin's in an environment where it's going to sweat, and we are wonderful for that. So, and it's not just for runners, it's for literally anybody. If you walk to the post office, if you're experiencing perspiration, which is pretty common when your limbs in a prostheses, whether you're an AK, BK, or upper. So I just want to throw that out there. We got a lot of stuff coming in, and
Right.
So if we don't answer something tonight, folks, my email address is going to be on the end because things are flying here. So we want to be here for you. So if we miss it, please reach out to me, and I promise you we'll get back to you.
Yep, sounds good. So we're going to talk about the BOA system now, Kathy. And yes, definitely belts for running. That's pretty much a guarantee when you're doing a serious running. I'm just kind of flipping through these comments here. Kay says whole family uses liquid to powder. It's wonderful. And like I said, guys, I'm not an amputee, but I'm a runner, and I use liquid to powder. It's good stuff. Love that stuff.
We want to remember it kills bacteria and fungal stuff and reduces friction, which is what we all experience, even with all these cool new technologies and socket designs and materials. I think it's a good time to say even manufacturers of prosthetic materials, they consider this kind of a semi-rigid. I know you can see it bends pretty easy. I like semi-rigid for my personal use. There is softer materials, but there's companies out there adding silver and different versions of products that when we make these interfaces that kills bacteria. So again, we have manufacturers of plastics recognizing, hey, we need to control this environment that we can do with VitalFit, but that's kind of cool. So if you hear somebody talking about a silver additive or Fit or North Seas plastic, that's neat, I think. So leading into different, and I think we had this conversation last week with the liners or 2 weeks ago. Companies are trying to address the temperature, the perspiration, the bacterial problem sockets can create, but we could do it all and prevent it with using VitalFit every day. So as we move on, maybe to the next one, or Chris, do you want to announce the winner? Did we do that? I know we're moving quick and we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we announced the winner of the
good.
But so taking a break, and we're just about the halfway mark. I'm super excited because I love the fun things. I like to open the present before the card, and I know this time, but I'm just saying. So we're shouting out wonderful 3 individuals tonight that have attended their 10th webinar with VitalFit. So we've been doing this about a year, and I just want to say thank you so much. We're super psyched and appreciative for your support. So Michelle L. and Sharon K. and Ashley M., we are going to send you travel kits for your participation. And I can't say enough how much we appreciate it and your support. So please take my email address down at the end and get us your address, and we'll send you those out. So thank you so much.
Ashley, aren't you glad you stayed away for this, girl? I told you. Good.
Okay. All right. Maybe we can move on to the next slide here, Paul, and talk about some of the technologies. You want to tee this one up to Cosi?
Well, I was like, this is where you're more of the expert here, but I can talk briefly. Yes. So definitely, guys, in the past 3 years that I've had my clinic here in Tampa, this is technology that has been walking into my clinic. That prior to opening my clinic, I never saw any of this adjustable socket technology, and it was definitely very interesting for me to start learning about this. So I'm familiar with the adjustable socket technology, and I know that my patients who tend to look at this technology have tried the traditional sockets, and they really haven't been able to get comfortable with those different shapes and fit. So there's a couple of options just even in the last 3 years that I've had my own practice that have popped up. So I think the first one we're going to be talking about is a little bit about the socketless socket, Martin Bionics. That's a name that we hear a lot in the community. I know that from their business model, just talking to a couple of their prosthetists, that it is a kit that comes together, and then the prosthetist has to receive very specialized training to understand how to put this together. That's definitely going to be a theme you're going to hear from me tonight about the new socket technology, regardless of what company you would decide to explore, making sure that the prosthetist who's putting this together has received the specialized training, because it is different than your traditional socket.
Yeah, good point. And I think Tom just put a pop-up in here. This is training is key. And as a prosthetist, I'm truthfully, I'm learning about socketless socket. I've seen it around. I know Jay very well for 4 or 5 years now, and maybe a little bit longer. It gives another alternative to somebody who potentially can't tolerate ischial containment, like the other socket up there, the old traditional looking socket, which is very much a depiction of what this is right here. The Martin socket really is addressing some of the perspiration issues, the weight issues. They're about half the weight, and I think Tom can probably chime in on this, because I know Tom wore just about everything, and he's currently in the socketless socket. But increased comfort, lower trim lines, they can achieve that. You're still wearing some type, and Tom, lighter and much cooler. He just popped up. It's one of the things that even the hi-fi socket totes, longer wear times, the feeling is lightweight and free. They're breathable. I think Jay's really on to something here. And, again, we've got to wear this prosthesis, 10, 15 hours a day. So I think it's another design that's available to give comfort and adjustability to the patient. I know that David, one of the patient models, is super high activity guy too. So I'm not 100% sure, because I need more training of if you put this on a runner or is this an everyday ambulator. I'm not sure. I got to ask that question to Jay, but maybe Tom, you can answer that question for us in the chat box. That'd be pretty interesting.
Right. No, I now remember just another company that, unfortunately, they're not in business anymore, but they made another adjustable socket. And at the time, the running was something that they were still playing around with in terms of the pressure. So I would be curious to see if the Martin Bionic socket can tolerate the forces of running, just to see how that would work. So interestingly enough, and I think we have another, do we have another slide coming up, Greg?
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Right, more images adjustability, adjustable sockets. Again, the lens socket on the right. I think Martin Bionic socket, a couple images looking down on this socket. I think Tom just put it up there. He's living a lifestyle. I'm sorry, I got to pull it up. Yeah, much better than traditional for Tom. So again, I think it's key. If you're in more comfort and you're doing better, if you have sensitivity to pressures, is where these sockets, in my mind, work the best. Tom, I'm reading your pop-ups as we're doing. Bilateral 60-year-old man in these, and he prefers them, and he's had everything. So I think it's another option for our, transfemoral patients, as well as our transfibular patients. You all can see the pictures. That's another Boa adjustable socket. 72-year-old. Okay, I'm just having.
Okay, Greg, come on, you got to give this guy props. He's been connected for 60 years. This guy.
Young man, he's younger than that. Come on. But again, to educate this, again, we're still wearing liners with some of this, some socks. There's still going to be limb management incorporated with some of these systems. So I think that's important to say. I do love that they're integrating some of the, ratchet or coyote designed buckles and ratchets in them, the Boa systems. I think, again, I keep going back to this Boa system that gives you some stabilization. You can, if your volume's changing throughout the day, you can twist the dial to tighten up those windows. That's pretty unique to some systems. And I think it probably opens more doors to not really worrying about volume changes if I brought that sock. So that's pretty cool, I think, Cosi.
Yep. And that's definitely what my patients here in Florida would talk about, is that it was just obviously easier for volume adjustment throughout the day. And they did, even though they're still wearing the liner, they did feel it was cooler because you have those open windows. So Kay is asking, how is it for other impact activities like hiking? Does it give you the stability? It does, Kay. And I have to, I'll be honest, the first time I saw an adjustable socket, I'm like, how the heck is that going to support anything? I mean, there's just struts there. Where's the rest of it? How? But then as I started learning more about the mechanics behind it and realizing, oh yeah, no, it really does provide the stability. And we're going to see in another design of another socket just how exactly they get the stability. And you know, the science behind it is certainly there. I definitely think, you know, I won't lie. Usually I'm, you know, Greg and I have the whole KISS rule, keeping it simple. So when a person who's a new amputee comes to me and they ask for recommendations on socket, for example, I'll say, let's start with the traditional socket and just see, mainly because there's more prosthetists out there that know how to make those traditional sockets, and finding, okay, if this is really not working and the issue with the volume is becoming a big problem, then is when I'd like to say, okay, let's look at adjustable socket technology. Let's see if, you know, we might have to look outside the zip code to find a practitioner who's experienced, but let's see if this is an option for you. So that's just kind of how I make those recommendations. And I think everybody has a little different way of doing it. So
Exactly. I think you're spot on, Cosi. And I think I'm just reading some of the chats. You know, there's still going to be sock adjustments. There's still going to be adding ply with some of these type of system. Ashley just put, I have 2 Revo adjustable sockets. I love it. I still need to wear 1 ply. It's better than having to run to the restroom and add socks throughout the day. So again, these manufacturers and your process are addressing these volume changes. And I think we can do it with Boa. We can do it with the Martin Bionics, the Hi-Fi socket that we're gonna have another slide on, which is even very similar to the Martin Bionics. Now, I don't want to, you know, hurt anybody's feelings here, but they're very similar thought theory processes. When you look at this socket, and here's 3 different sockets that we have up here, everybody. So if you recognize the Boa, the little dial I'd be holding up to the screen in the middle socket, and that's kind of a quad design, I would say. If I look at it, you know, we're not getting a real proximal view of that, but again, we put it in because that's a pin lock type of system with adjustability. So double suspension, go back to Cosi's comments of what's suspending. Okay, we've got this system, you know, potentially has a pin. We can have pin vacuum system with Boa, which is, you know, pretty cool. If you look at the socket on your, I guess that's my left, on the kind of gray colored with the 4 windows, that's a Quorum Quattro socket, everybody. It just, and it's kind of the same Boa technology, 3D printed though. We're gonna talk a little bit about that after we talk about the socket on your right. The Hi-Fi socket, and in my mind, as a practitioner, I see the Martin Bionic socket is a little freer, maybe a little more windows availability to letting air flow off the socket, but the Hi-Fi socket too is adjusted this. And they've got kind of a term of osteostabilization, which is pretty interesting. They really, when you get casted for this socket design, they stand you in a jig and it applies pressure medial laterally and anterior and posterior. So they're actually pushing soft tissue out of the way to reduce or stop any femoral movement or tibial movement in the socket, and then your flesh would come out the windows that you see on this socket. Very interesting. It reduces, you know, pain, rubbing, skin breakdown, pistoning. They claim it reduces falls because your proprioception's better. I think it's very similar to the Martin Bionics, because I know Jay and Tom, maybe you can agree to this, that all these attributes to having a socketless socket, comfort, gait speed, symmetry, is pretty important to all of us. So, but it's pretty neat, all the different, you know, 3 different designs right here on one screen that are addressing a lot of the same issues that we all can experience on volume change. So,
yep.
Cosi, what's your thoughts?
No, basically you hit on everything. And then Kay, so just to reiterate, this is how they get the stability. So in reference specifically also to the high fidelity, the one when you're facing the screen that's on the right, that they're squishing that soft tissue so that they can get to that femur, specifically in the above the knee, and hold it in place. So that's where the stability comes into play with this particular adjustable socket. So again, just going back to even the traditional socket where I mentioned, here, Bob. Okay. So the goal of the traditional socket is to, he's not very cooperative today, is to provide a bony lock. So to really stabilize that femur right there. So that's what they're doing with this adjustable socket as well.
Right, right. So you've got some ramal containment too, it looks like, in those on the socketless socket. And I think Tom just put up a quote that it's more comfortable. You can sit longer and stand longer. And here's a user, in my opinion, which just tells the story. I mean, it's more comfortable. So if you have pressure intolerance, maybe that's the greatest socket in the world, and talk to your prosthetist. Again, on the whole flip side of this, if you can take the pressures of skin fit, ischial containment with maybe a little ramal containment, it's obviously, in my opinion, excuse me, don't throw me on the bus, everybody. I think it's the best performance for a guy like me and what I do. I deal with a lot of patients that wear that type of system. But again, it's more demanding on the skin. So again, right back to skincare, you really have to be adamant to taking care of the skin. And when you go into these type of, containment sockets, and it's not really giving you a great picture, but this is pretty aggressive. And actually it's one of my, my personal socket. But you'll see as your prosthetic wear, that's some pretty aggressive trim lines, pretty intimate fitting, and again, more demanding on the skin. Again, you got to be really conscious on hydration when you're wearing ischial containment or a suction socket without any liner or adjustability, because your fit can be dramatically change if you get dehydrated. And I like to use it on more stable patients who've been amputees longer. I know Tom had, and I keep pointing at you, Tom, but we've worked together before in the past. And if you stay hydrated and keep your weight to the same, this is a good option too. But I'm kind of over the moon how these Boa systems work, because they offer a lot of adjustability to manage your prosthetic fit through the day. So I guess we could probably
wait. Okay, so sorry. No, I'm totally into it. So we're gonna take a breath here, because I'm all about the giveaways. So sorry, Greg. All right, so let's ingest all that fabulous information. So Jamie's gonna put a link, and please let us know the name of the first video on there. We'll give you some time to do that.
Greg, if you're gonna have water, at least the green cup, man. I have Han Solo.
Oh, you got Star Wars. I know. I'm gonna have to update the game here now. All right.
This is like old school. This is like 80s, from the 80s glasses. Like, this is old school, man. Come on.
I love Star Wars. Okay. In 2 weeks, when everybody tunes into our Q&A show, I'll have a different cup, I promise. Okay.
All right, guys. So I do kind of want to add a little bit more to that. And again, this is not a lot of it is also based on my conversation with one of my clients in California who's struggling right now with her socket. She's been an amputee for a really long time. And a lot of it, and just kind of talking to her and asking about the issues she's having with the socket. Certainly the shape is bothering her. And in her case, the suspension, because she keeps saying it keeps popping off. And stability. And it kind of went to, okay, you've brought these issues to your prosthetist. They're not able to address it. And she went off to get a second opinion. And again, it's the one thing I kept stressing to her today was the skill of the prosthetist. I really value a skilled prosthetist who can make a socket that fits well. And anybody who's listened to my show will have heard me say, you can put a peg leg under a socket. If the socket fits well, the person can walk beautifully. Conversely, you can have some of the best technology on the planet under that socket. If that socket's not fitting well, you're not going anywhere. So having a prosthetist who really knows, someone like Greg, who really knows the concepts and the physics behind making a well-fit, well-aligned socket is worth gold. And then from there, once you've got that, then you can start looking at options, all your different options. One thing I used to tell folks, because with the adjustable socket technology, the particular company that used to help with this area, I would recommend to people that first year and a half, when residual limb volume was all over the place, to try to stay with a traditional socket because you're going through check socket after check socket after check socket. And even with some of these adjustable sockets, and the one particular one I was familiar with, it could adjust up to 15 ply. But as many of you know, in that first year, you're just eating through sockets sometimes, and 15 ply goes by like that. So after that limb volume has started to stabilize and you see what your normal is, are you somebody who fluctuates 5 ply a day? Are you someone who fluctuates 15 ply? Are you someone that doesn't fluctuate at all with the amount of volume in your socket? So that would also indicate to me when it was time to maybe look at adjustable socket technology. I hope that makes sense, guys.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think again, back to pressure tolerance too, like your patient said. When you look at a frame like this, okay, here's a traditional frame for ischial containment, everybody. And what this is against your anatomy. Now, obviously, we have the flexible or semi-flexible liner that goes in there, but this is kind of the aspect of when you sit down, you're sitting on this hard, rigid carbon fiber that you don't experience in adjustable socket with the socketless socket, or even some of the hi-fi sockets. Like Tom said, I mean, just the activities of bike riding, horseback riding, things you may love to do, or sitting in a chair if you're working in an office all day. A lot of times we will cut some of this out, but again, a guy like me or some of the higher activity, we leave them rigid. So again, it comes to a comfort thing, and obviously we're encapsulating more heat with something like this. So I think, Martin Bionics is really, and BioDesigns have some great idea and theory and concept behind them. And there's patients that they work on. So I had to throw that on there because we don't have this big rigid socket frame anymore when you're going socketless. It's rich. So we all know what these feel like. So I had to throw it in. So good point, Cosi.
And Tom says here, don't let pride cause you pain. A belt is great for horseback riding. I'm not going to wear a belt for everyday use, but for cycling and horseback riding. And it's true, guys. Like, the same way you change your footwear. If you're going to go running, you wear running shoes. If you're going dancing, you wear your high heels. So depending on what activity you're doing, you have to. Well, I don't think.
Yeah, I stumble too much.
But when you adjust your leg also accordingly. So yes, if you're having some of these higher end activities. For my runners, and I tell them, look, if you want to run and make sure that leg stays on, you got to wear some sort of extra suspension or move to a pin lock system. Not for their everyday walking, but those adjustments have to be made so that you can stay comfortable and stay active.
Right. Yeah, good point. I think we talked about some of that with these power belts. Remember a couple shows ago, I think these are things that for higher activity, this is, again, addition to its suspension. So good point. I think that's a great point. So
asking, what do we think about silicone skin lotion? No. So Heidi, let me I'll give, and I know Greg's got an opinion and Chris has an opinion. I want to hear their opinions. I like silicone in a liner. A lot of my patients will wear silicone liners, and I am not a dermatologist, but I know that whenever my patients wear lotions that have silicone in it, it becomes like an oil slick. So not something in the lotion itself that I typically like to see. Greg, Chris?
No, I agree with Cosi. I think there are some silicone anti-friction formulas out there, and they're just exactly that. They become so slippery that you'll have suspension issues with the prostheses coming off. And I see patients talking a lot. I follow a lot of blogs, coconut oil, trying to address these skin-related issues, silicone, lidocaine, whatever that may be. But anytime you're introducing silicone to your skin and your liner, it just becomes this slippery surface that I think we can do it better with liquid to powder. There's a better alternative for sure. Than and not saying it's, if that's all you have that day and you're in the Sahara, yeah, maybe try the silicone. But I think we want to be conscious of what we put in on our bodies. We want to be conscious, especially if you're putting it on your residual and then putting that in a liner, then putting that in a prosthesis for 8 hours. There's got to be some kind of transdermal thing going on, and I believe it. I remember we used to be able to taste the laminating resin from a quad socket. Now, really dating me is you get a new quad socket layup, you put that on, and you can literally taste the lamination smell from the acrylic resin, and that's coming in through your skin. So that's my kind of caution, skull and crossbones when it comes to silicone-based products or lidocaine-based, based products, because they're masking things that you probably should be aware of. So that's where VitalFit, and I know Cosi, I can speak for her on this, has been a fantastic skincare system for addressing all the issues we encounter in prosthetics, orthotics, and there's just no question that that's the answer. So I see all these chats up now. I got to read them now while you talk.
I've been keeping
check out Beth. So
Yeah.
Beth uses silicone lotion on the top of her sleeve, but I do take care to wash it off every day. For me, it works well with the lotion to powder. I'm gonna guess, Beth, that's our liquid to powder. If I don't use it, I get blisters. So I have some ideas around that, as in how's the sleeve fit. So I'm going to give that to Greg, but
yeah.
and
here are my thoughts, and you've heard, both Greg and I have mentioned this on the show. If there's something that works for you, then it works for you. But my question would be, is the fit of your sleeve proper? Is it too loose that you're getting a little too much friction and chafing, or the opposite? It could be just a little too tight. So I would look at that. And so Kathy also uses the silicone lotion at the top of the sleeve. And again, guys, I've used silicone products. When I worked in the burn trauma unit, we would use silicone sheets that were very similar to the liner material, and we would put them on top of the skin grafts to help with scar tissue management. But again, with these burn victims, it was open to air. It was not trapped underneath the prosthesis. And we see it in the liners, but again, when you're putting something that's going into your skin, into your system, it kind of changes things a little bit. So I would just say, Beth, try to see if there's something going on with the sleeve itself, the fit of the sleeve. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head, and maybe that sleeve is too tight and it wants to roll down. There are some Solati Health makes some little silicone bars that you could glue onto your liner or sleeve to keep it from coming down. And those would be alternate things I think I would look at versus using silicone or Vaseline or something like that. We all know petroleum type based jellies will degrade your liner materials, your socket materials. So again, caution, stay away from that. But I think we can do it. Again, what Cosi said, if you've got a system that works great for you and you're getting through every day comfortably, then stick with it. I'm a proponent with what Cosi says on that. If you're excessive sweating and you're finding maybe liquid to powder's not doing it, you can add maybe antiperspirant. If you find like Certain Dry or something, I think there's all these different, ways to address issues. So if you, like I said, if the silicone's working and you're good and okay, maybe try liquid to powder there and see if you get the same result from a better, more healthy product would be where I'd go with that. So
And you can always reach out to us again.
yeah, or reach out to Chris, right? So we have one more quick slide. I know we're running pretty late here. Real quick on the high fidelity. Let's throw that up. Again, this is another alternative, folks, to for upper and lower extremities. And I apologize, we never talk about uppers. And I hope there's some uppers watching the show. But this type of technology applies to the uppers. We hit on it a little bit. Again, it's they believe it gives you better proprioception. Again, it's the osteostabilization. That's another type of open socketless socket kind of theory. So there's other companies out there. There's just not Martin. I think there's Randall Alley who does this, which is pretty unique. Again, it takes required training to build these correctly. So like Cosi says, you need to find that prosthetist who's up on continuing education. And again, personally for me, the hi-fi stuff, I need to go to Randall's course and learn about it more. But they claim lower trend lines, better comfort. And I do agree when you see the medial aspect of this socket, it's gonna be maybe more comfortable than having your residual limb in, again, a hard socket or hard retainer, like we do a lot and prosthetists do a lot nationally.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing I do want to comment, and maybe it's just the gentleman on this picture, the gentleman wearing the green shorts wearing this, as you can see, his trim lines are lower. And I do want to make a comment on that because again, I was having this conversation today with my client, the sub-ischial. So basically, good old Bob. Okay, so with that sub-ischial, it's exactly that the trim lines are coming down much, much lower. So you're not all up in the groin with the trim lines, it's down here. So the pros to that is the obvious from a comfort side is that you don't have that socket sticking all the way up in the wedding. But then the downside to that is that you are compromising a little bit of that stability, and your glutes have to be that much stronger to be able to stabilize those hips and power you through the walk. And again, this is where skill of the prosthetist really needs to be up on top to make sure that they know how to fit this properly. So just things to take into consideration if you are considering a socket that has lower trim lines. And I just want to get Tom's question. He says, where can we watch this again at a later date? Tom, if you go to the VitalFit website and you go under, is it labeled under the webinar series, Chris?
It's videos. Yeah.
Videos.
Click on videos, and then everything we've ever done, which is awesome, is in there along with some other goodies. So everything's recorded, so you can go ahead and check it out again and all that good stuff.
Good. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. And real quick on these hi-fi, I think, Cosi, you spotted as a PT with this gentleman standing here. This is subischial, and you can tell by gait symmetry on some of those subischial wearers that maybe it's not as great. Maybe they have some concept here with osteostabilization, with the struts and the compression on the soft tissue, which makes it better. I don't know. Something I need to learn about more myself because it is kind of intriguing. We kind of quickly went over the quadrilateral quattro socket and 3D printing. We didn't really get into because we run over on these, but for everybody who's present, there's some neat technology, some 3D printing where they can print your frame, print your socket, and it's done overnight. That can be from a positive casting, a scanner, and the outcomes of this image here is just beautiful. I mean, click system engagements. So it's really a great time to be an amputee. It's a funny thing to say, but I think that the technology is really catching up with the knee or fit technology in socket design. So that's cool. I really I appreciate the whole guys at Quorum that send images of what they're doing. And stay tuned. There's some really cool concepts coming out for volume control. And, frankly, the 3D printing, pretty neat. As a practitioner, you can print this thing overnight and, it's hopefully not that late in the day thing, but you can come out with these beautiful graphics and, images like this on the screen right now. So there's some good stuff coming, folks. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so I'm going to interject. Okay. So for the fabulous 4-part kit, Paul actually is going to put the link, to our survey. And I just want to thank those that have done the survey, and please continue because it helps us make our webinars better. And that's what it's all about. We want to be here for you. So please take a moment, fill out the survey. We're going to pull a name out of a hat or jar or something, and then we will let you know via email if you've won. So again, really important. Your feedback is really helpful. So want to say thank you for that. I'm going to throw up a couple of slides for us. Yeah, there it is. So congratulations to those of you that have won some prizes tonight. We have a discount code specific for the webinar this evening, where you can go to our website and afford 20% off your next order. And Cosi Talks, again, Wednesday nights, Facebook, everything limb loss. She's amazing, which I think all of you already know, but check it out. She's got wonderful hosts, major manufacturers, a lot of amazing information. So check Cosi out. And got questions. So I'm super psyched on this. We're going to try something out because we love your interaction. It's what fuels us and really is what we're passionate about. So we're going to try something every Tuesday. at the beginning of the month, we're going to have a webinar for strictly Q&As. So whatever's on your mind, bring it. Easy for me to say, maybe I'll help. But Cosi and Greg are going to be here for a full hour to answer your questions. So it's all about you, whatever is on your mind, whatever you want to know. So I'm pretty pumped on that. So check it out. Our first one's in June.
It's open season on the clinicians, guys. Have to take your pot shots.
Talking about socket too, I'm just saying. So June 8th, first one. Okay. So here we go.
Yeah, on a closing note, I see Ashley put in here. She sometimes you slip it in there if you're still on, Ashley, with the liquid to powder. Let it dry all the way. Just a little dime-sized dab, and don't use too much. Let it dry before you get that liner on. That's really key because you're not encapsulating and keeping it in an environment that it doesn't want to dry. So real quick, thanks everybody. Thanks Cosi and Chris and VitalFit for letting us talk about this. I do agree, 2 weeks with the question and answer. It's probably going to be one of our best podcasts because we're going to let you ask the questions and we can cover it when we run short trying to talk about technologies or all the neat stuff that we encounter daily as PTs and prosthetists. So thanks everybody. Cosi?
Sounds good to me. I can't wait, guys. Can't wait. And guys, hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow night too.
Okay.
Right. And share. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, knock, TikTok. Please share because we're here for y'all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great night, everybody. All right, ladies. Bye-bye. Okay. Sorry about the dogs barking. They barked the whole time.